Dr. King spoke of reaching the promised land, but he recognized that we either all reach it together or none of us reach it. He knew that without justice, there is no peace. Without justice, there is no peace.
I don't know if we're still on the same page, but what is it that we want? DSP! And when do we want it? Now! What do we want? DSP! And when do we want it? Now! What do we want? DSP! And when do we want it? Now! Thank you!
You're welcome! When the history of our times comes to be written, little mention will be made of how the logos on our shoes looked or on our sweatshirts looked. What will be noted is where we stand, where we stood, you and I, and we as a community, where we stood on the great social issues of the day. And in gathering here, you are taking your stand for justice. And you are summoning the university, our university, to take its stand for justice, challenging its leaders to fulfill the promise of a great university. And so I'm so proud to be standing here with you today and to salute you in this worthy campaign. Thank you.
President Spanier, are you listening? Students have spoken. Faculty members have spoken. Churches, unions, community members, elected officials, they have spoken. We, the university community, demand the Designated Suppliers Program. Borough Councilman Peter Morris spoke of Martin Luther King's legacy of economic justice. Professor Paul Durenberger spoke of human dignity. UPUA President Gavin Kierans spoke of the student voice and the right to be heard. And all of you in the audience have spoken and continue to speak. So tell them again, what do we want? DSP! And when do we want it? Now! And we are not alone. The movement for sweatshop-free collegiate apparel is alive and well across the nation. More than 40 universities have already adopted the DSP. Brandeis, Columbia, Cornell, Georgetown, Indiana, Iowa, Washington, Wisconsin. They have all declared publicly that workers will no longer be exploited in their name. 9 years ago, concerned students first called on Spanier to meaningfully address the problem of sweatshop-produced Penn State apparel. Spanier delayed, foot-dragged, stonewalled, but the students were not deterred. They took the fight to his doorstep. And in doing so, they built the foundation of a movement that continues today. We at Penn State continue to demand sweatshop-free Penn State apparel. We demand that the workers who sew our clothes be treated with respect, that they be paid enough to support their families and guaranteed the right to a union if they so desire. The struggle continues because workers making Penn State apparel continue to endure abusive treatment, excessive hours, dangerous working conditions, and wages inadequate to meet basic needs. Meanwhile, Spanier continues to use faulty arguments and misleading information to justify his long-standing policy of doing nothing. He talks about following allegations of abuse and monitoring the sweatshop issue. Those are euphemisms for inaction. He says he, quote, plans to remain very involved in the discussions about improving working conditions where Penn State apparel is made. Thank you, Peter. But his plan apparently doesn't involve any discussions with us. A month ago, in the spirit of dialogue, we, SLAP and USAS, invited Spanier to a forum on the DSP and Penn State affiliation. I'll let all you guess what he said. No! Right. That's pretty much how it sounded to us, too. He refused to participate. Instead, he organized a corporate Corporate Responsibility Symposium. The Fair Labor Association will be there, which has Nike, Adidas, and New Era Cap on its board. Also in attendance will be 3 licensees. In other words, Spanier invited the brands responsible for the exploitation of workers and the FLA, which facilitates that exploitation. But we weren't invited. And if we wish to ask the panelists questions, we'll have to submit them in writing prior to the event. Spanier's so busy talking about corporate responsibility that he has neglected his own responsibilities as president of Penn State. He has neglected his responsibility to openly engage members of the university community. He has neglected his responsibility to realize Penn State's mission to improve the lives of the people of Pennsylvania, the nation, and the world. But this comes as no surprise. Spanier has a long record of rejecting dialogue, of ignoring students, of perpetuating oppression. You would think that there's no way Spanier could ignore today's outpouring of support for the folks who sew Penn State apparel. You probably wonder why. If so many have spoken today, we ask that you all return next week. Because telling Spanier just once is never enough. It takes sustained pressure to force him to do the right thing. When it became apparent that New Era, which makes Penn State hats, was running a sweatshop in Mobile, Alabama, students slapping USAS called on Spanier to take action on behalf of the workers who were suffering poverty wages, racial discrimination, and sexual harassment. Several were fired for attempting to form a union. While other universities actively responded to the workers' appeal, temporarily cutting contracts with New Era or threatening to do so, Spanier stood idly by. Thanks to the actions of the universities who supported the workers, New Era caved to the workers' demands and accepted new contracts, which provided for increased wages and the formation of a union. Workers previously fired or forming a union were rehired. Yes, it's cause to celebrate. Unfortunately, Penn State played no role in that victory, because Spanier ignored our repeated requests for the university to step in. It wasn't the first time. We've been ignored for 2.5 years. Like Speak Out, like Black Caucus, like Eco Action, we've been locked out, and we've been locked out for 2.5 years. And we fully expect the same treatment today and next week. We expect Spanier to continue to justify the exploitation of workers all around the world. Exploitation in our name. He'll do nothing. He won't sign on to the DSP unless you make him. So please join us next week, Tuesday, April the 15th at 4 p.m. right here. Because the longer Spanier delays, the longer workers suffer. And 9 years is long enough. So please join us now in delivering a letter demanding that President Spanier sign on to the Designated Suppliers Program. Thank you.